On the profile interview segment this week, I'll be speaking with the president of SANU. He tells me that the federal government has every right to put a ban on the number of tertiary institutions that can be in the country for now. He also spoke about some of the solutions that can improve the non-teaching staff welfare in the country. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
It's been a while since we had a conversation, and I remember very clearly that the last conversation we had was about unpaid allowances. Right now, what's the update as regards that?
Well, thanks, Sharon, for constantly keeping in touch with the labor movement and how it affects our people. The work that we do, is never ending. So it's always work in progress. And allowances, payments, salaries, agitation for better welfare and so on will not end, because nothing is static, in life. Everything is dynamic. The economy is wobbling, dealing with our members here and there, the downturn and so on. So as long as the economy keeps pinching, naturally we will keep agitating. So, but on the pending issues that you're referring to, nothing much is achieved, because we still have leftovers of 2 months of unpaid, salaries as a result of the 2022, strike. We also still have backlog of the wage award, which federal government under the current president Bola Tinubu, promised, to put some relief on the lives of our workers. So far, I think we still have like 6 months yet to be paid, and then the 25-35% salary increment as a result of the NIMI BRICS, negotiations with the University Workers Union, even though that was not what we asked for, but unilaterally government decided to, approve that increment. That increment has been implemented, but we still have areas of about 12 months or 13 months. So, like I said, it's still work in progress. And recall also the most recent issue of the payment of and allowances, which government approved 50 billion naira, but to our surprise, the non-teaching staff got only a paltry 20%, which we outrightly, complained about, and we have met with the government, and even some of our members were even omitted from the pay, from those that benefited from that, especially workers in the inter-university centers. We have them about 4, the French language village in Lagos, the Arabic language village in Borno, then the National Mathematical Center, and then the one in Aba, in Abia State. So those people were completely yanked off. They were not paid, and they are supposed to be entitled to that. And then, of course, the issue of releases, for even our university, because our agitations is not, skewed to only the members, but even the system.
Talking about the system, I would like to ask, talking about the university and funding, would you say that the university is properly funded at the moment?
Well, practically, there is nothing like adequate funding in the education sector itself, talk less of our universities. Because when you talk about funding, you're talking about capital, funds, and then the recurrent. And then, in the recurrent you have, the overheads. Now, the challenge our universities face as of today, if not for the tertiary education fund, TED fund, universities would have grounded completely, because most of the capital, allocations will not be released almost throughout the year until maybe it was the end, third quarter or so, you realize that maybe about 40% or maximum 50% is accessed. And then payment of bills, for the overheads, from the overheads, is a big challenge. For example, electricity. There is no university, public university. I've said this before in your program, and I will still say it again. There is no public university in Nigeria, whether federal or state, that has had enough funding from government in terms of overhead to pay their electricity bill. Though there is a deliberate move that we have seen in the federal government of today of bringing up that program of this solar, energy provision. But it's not for all the universities. I think some universities were selected, about 6 or 7 from the different geopolitical zones. So that is not enough. Even though it's a good move and it's a good initiative, and for some of the universities, for example, I went to Joseph Tucker University in Benue, and going out in the night, you could see that the place is well lit. And some of their laboratories and so on still have electricity because of the solar energy, provided. But this is required in all universities, for goodness sake. Let all our public universities have this. Let government, expand the scope. Because without electricity, there is no way you can run a university. You cannot have teaching, research with ease. Neither would you have even the extended community service. Because you will need to provide water, you need the clinics to run, you need workers in the offices to be comfortable. And the weather, except for some few months in the year, it can be very, very terrible, especially up north here.
Still talking about funding, there's been several conversations as regards the need for a salary increment for both teaching and non-teaching staff, that is, for everyone working in a tertiary institution. Can you give us updates about this? Is there any increase yet? What's still the plight of an average worker in the university system?
Thanks for this very important, question. These current salaries being received by workers in the universities was what was approved by government in 2009. That's about 16 years ago. And you can imagine the kind of inflation that has taken place between that period and now. In 2009, what you could buy with 1,000 naira is what you will use 100,000 naira now to buy. So the issue of renegotiating that agreement that gave birth to the salaries that we receive today, that's Contis 2 for the non-teaching staff, and then CONWAS for the academic staff, is long overdue. Long overdue because whatever we receive today is not taking us home. And I have said times without number, if you improve the life of workers in our tertiary institutions, and especially in the universities, half of Nigeria's challenge will be solved. Why do I say that? The universities are like the manufacturing industry for our human capital development. If the workers are happy, teachers and the ones working, in shaping the, character of our students, the non-teaching staff, and the ones running the system, they will have all that it requires in terms of energy, in terms of attention, in terms of focus to put in their best. And these complaints of producing half-baked graduates will be a thing of the past.
So do you want to tell us more about the role of teaching and non-teaching staff in the academic system towards nation building?
Yes, why not? Like I said, the universities, polytechnics and colleges of education are like the manufacturing industry of our human capital, products. That's the young, teeming young, men and women that come out to work in both public and private sector. That is where you train engineers, technicians, administrators, medical doctors, scientists, lawyers, and all, sorts that runs the system and the economy. So when you have that system fully equipped, the workers there fully, encouraged in terms of their own, take home, they will put in their best. Mind you, these workers, the teaching, for example, are the ones imparting knowledge. They cannot impart knowledge if they are not properly, fed, if they are not settled, if their homes are at war, in inverted commas. For the non-teaching staff, of course, you know that we are in charge of, provision of services, medical health, electricity, water supply, security, even the running of the system in terms of payment of salaries, allowances, and training of our workers. That is a component that is handled by the non-teaching staff. So it's a symbiotic relationship. If you have a pauperized non-teaching staff, it will affect, it has a direct bearing on the non-teaching staff, on the teaching staff, because services will not be rendered. Students will not be happy. Mind you, the system in itself is there because of the students. They are the most important stakeholders. There's no doubt about that. There's no debate.
Your customers.
Yes, they are our customers. So if the students are there and services are not provided, you know what happens the following day? They start beating drums. There's no water. VC must go, registrar must go, everybody must go, and they block the roads and so on. So you cannot but agree that the welfare and well-being of university workers has direct correlation of the input and output in our economy.
There's always been this discrepancy between non-academic staff and academic staff. Looking at the fact that there's this push for a new wage for workers in the tertiary institutions, what would be your expectation from the federal government of Nigeria?
Well, I'm happy you brought up this matter, and let me tell you, from the grapevines, even though as a unionist, I don't want to say from the grapevines, but I can tell you that we are aware that government is in the process of reviewing salaries. We are aware of that. But the danger that is coming with that is also the info we have that there is a deliberate move by some people who do not mean well for this government to bring in disparity in the salaries of teaching and the non-teaching staff. And that will never be accepted by us, because it's a system. No one can claim monopoly over the other. There cannot be any university system running without the two. Or do I now say the three? If the students are not there, there won't be university. If there are students and there are teachers and there are no workers, there won't be university. The same happens if there are no workers, the non-teaching staff, there won't be any university to function. So bringing in disparity under any guise will be fought against, will be rejected, and we will clamp down on the system, because previous governments have tried that and have seen reason not to do it. So the non-teaching staff and the teaching staff have what they call a template for salaries, like I said, CONWAS for the teachers, academic staff, and the CONTIs for the non-teaching staff, that is the administrators and other professional staff. What you may have different is in the name of allowances. No non-teaching staff will claim allowances that is custom-made for the teaching staff, just like we also have our own allowances. But for the salary table, any attempt by any government to bring in disparity, it will just jeopardize even the fragile peace that is existing currently in the university system. So we are aware that government is trying to improve the salaries, but what my advice will be to them is that in the name of peace and progress and development, and if they love the system to continue to operate without any friction, is to continue to maintain what is there now. A seamless university salary scales with different names but with the same corresponding amounts. A professor's salary is the same with that who is the high with the non-teaching staff who is at the highest level. a Quantis 15 officer or a director in the university is at par with the professor, you know. For the bursars, registrars, and the vice chancellors, they have a consolidated salary. And then for a graduate assistant, his salary is at par with an admin assistant who is starting on level 7, while this one is on Conwas 1. Our advice to government is that we are peace-loving, we are progressives, we don't want any interruption in the system, and the only way that can be maintained is to maintain status quo, to ensure that both teaching and non-teaching staff have same salary scale, even with different names. It doesn't really matter. But any disparity will not, mean well for the system. That I can assure you.
On a final note again, I would like to ask, what's your reaction towards the federal government putting a ban on the establishment of any new university at a state or at a federal level?
Well, that is a very big and important question you have asked about this multiplication of universities without corresponding funding and development. If you say you will take the issue of our population, we have over 220 or 40 million Nigerians. If truly we are talking about access to education, we do not even have enough universities that will, that will accommodate our teeming youths that are supposed to go into institutions to learn. But then, bringing the system down to its knees by multiplying universities in the name of constituency projects is something that is most terrible, because senators, members of House of Reps, governors have now devised a way of settling their own people. They will now, everybody would like to have a university and a teaching hospital or a federal medical center in his village. Meanwhile, there is no corresponding funding, for that or for those. And even the present existing ones suffer from the strangulation of lack of adequate funds. So it's a welcome development. As far as I'm concerned, it's a welcome development to put a stop for now and see how we can, get enough and adequate funding for the ones that are existing. After 7 years or 10 years, as the case may be, if the economy improves and we need to establish more universities, so be it. We commend government actually for putting a stop to this.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you also for the opportunity.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.